All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. One thing I'm going to note is that occasionally I'm going to record our class meetings and post the recordings on YouTube, just in case you want to review back on the lecture, or if there happens to be a case where you'd have a university excused absence and want to watch the lecture and aren't able to attend class. And so today's one of those lectures that I'm going to be recording, so you'll notice I'm wearing a microphone. So if you don't want your voice on YouTube, then ask your question quietly and I'll try and mute the microphone, but I don't think for the most part anybody will actually notice that, that it's being recorded. So just wanted to let you know about that. By the way, the recording links will be posted on MU Online. If you do want to review it afterwards, I'll just post the link to the lecture there. So I took a look at the grade book and it seemed that most people had already been able to access reading quiz number 1. That's closed now. If you didn't get to quiz number 1, then you've lost your opportunity and it's never coming back. But that's okay, because if you did miss that one, there's plenty more opportunities to earn your quiz points. Speaking of which, quiz 2 is now open and it'll be available until Wednesday the 4th. You know, we don't have class next Monday because it's a university holiday, but we will have class a week from today. So any questions about the reading quizzes? Anybody have any concerns or problems about accessing those online? In the past, some students had trouble starting the quiz they were like connecting to the internet on Wi-Fi. They started the quiz and then their Wi-Fi got flaky and so they weren't able to submit their answers. And so I'd suggest that you take the quiz when you're not going to be interrupted, you've got a good solid internet connection, your roommate's not going to come in and start distracting you with pizza or something like that. So take it when you know you're going to be able to finish it. I had some people tell me that they finished the quiz in under a minute, so it shouldn't take too long. Did you have a question about the quizzes?
Yeah, my MU stuff wouldn't get off on it. Told me it was the same. Do I fix it that?
The IT services has a help desk in the library, and they'll be able to assist you with your login, like the username and password, all those sorts of things. It's just the ground floor of the library right as soon as you go in the main doors. Other questions? Yeah.
Will we get the grade back from that?
You can look in the grade book and it's available now. So I think it's My Grades once you get into the class, and then you can look how many of the 4 points you got right. Pretty easy though, right? Multiple choice, reading quiz. Now remember that the bargain is I'm going to stand up here and drone on and on and on and just give you boring lectures only on a handful of occasions. And the vast majority of the time I'm going to try and have nice activities for us to do, but the bargain is that you have to do the reading outside of class. That if it turns out you're not actually absorbing the material in the outside reading, then we can switch over to classroom lecture, but I think that we can use our class time for more interesting activities if you're able to keep up on the reading and are able to do the reading quizzes online. So hopefully we're successful with that. Now remember the assignment where you need to come to my office and ask me a question, that's due by Thursday at 5 p.m. So that's tomorrow at 5. Now I've got a university meeting scheduled between 2 and 3:15, and that's during the block of time I've set aside for my office hours. And so to make that up to you, I'm going to add some extra office hours today immediately after class. So from 1 until 2:30 today. Ordinarily I don't have office hours on Wednesday, but because of the meeting I'm going to be at tomorrow afternoon, I'd be happy to talk to you today after class. My office is room 113, just down the hall. All right. So I've got some good questions already. I'm glad that we're doing that assignment, getting a chance to get to know you and talk a little bit about engineering and your schedule. So hope to see you today or tomorrow for that. Tomorrow by 5 p.m. at the latest. And then finally, our House of Cards activity. I gave you the handout for that in class on Monday, and we did a little introductory activity here in class. That's due on Wednesday the 4th, which is the same day that your reading quiz number 2 is due. And so what you need to have that day is an idea of what your design is going to look like. You need to have the index cards purchased, and if you'd like to use your own tape, your own plastic clear tape, Scotch tape, then you can bring your own, or I have some available. I'll also have scissors, or you can bring your own scissors. But that activity is on next Wednesday, and you also have to have the written design plan. So hopefully you've had the chance to talk to your group members and get an idea of how you're handling that. We'll have a little bit of time, I think, towards the end of class today where you could meet as a group and discuss your ideas and talk about how it's going. So, any questions on these announcements before we get into brainstorming today? Any questions? All right. Well, what we're going to be talking about today is brainstorming, because often in the design process there's a problem, and you know there's more than one way to solve the problem, but you need to identify as many alternatives as possible, because selecting the best alternative can't be accomplished unless you have lots of different options to choose from in solving the problem. And so sometimes designing a solution begins with just generating a lot of ideas. And so brainstorming is the process of doing that. It's the process of identifying lots of courses of action. And there are a couple of different kinds of brainstorming, but all of them have some common rules that we're going to talk about before we do a brainstorming activity today. So the first rule of brainstorming is that you shouldn't hold back, that even if it seems outlandish at the time that you're proposing an idea during brainstorming, that any idea is acceptable, because it may seem crazy at first, but later on down the line it might be feasible. Or an idea that seems crazy might eventually be merged with another idea that's a little bit more realistic, and so the two together might be better than they would ordinarily by themselves. And so no holding back is the first rule of brainstorming. And I'm glad to see many of you are taking notes, because the midterm exam we'll have halfway through the semester will cover not only the reading material that you're doing outside of class, but also the lectures that we have here in class. The second rule of brainstorming is no boundaries. And I guess that's related to no holding back, that an idea is never too outrageous to mention. And I guess an element of no holding back that I didn't point out is that the idea can be brought to the floor any time during brainstorming, that there shouldn't be so much structure in a brainstorming session that it inhibits innovation. Sometimes during a formal brainstorming session, you'll have sequences of brainstorming, discussion, brainstorming, discussion, but that formality that you have shouldn't stand in the way of someone coming up with an idea. You can't really say no more ideas after this point, because it may be a brilliant idea. Okay? Number 3, no criticizing. Part of the reason why it's important not to criticize other people when they're offering their ideas is that obviously if they feel like they're being attacked, that immediately shuts down creativity. If you feel like you're being judged or that your viewpoints are unwelcome, then the criticism is going to have an immediate negative effect. And what you're trying to do during brainstorming is cultivate as much attention to detail and as much creativity as you can. And number 4 is related to that, no dismissing. And so you can't judge the ideas during the brainstorming session, even if you're avoiding criticism, even if you're trying to not be negative towards someone else. You shouldn't rule out an idea until all the brainstorming is complete and all the ideas have been generated, because later on down the line is when you may select alternatives and rank the alternatives. This is just all about generating new ideas. Number 5, no limit, is interesting, because sometimes in a group, if you've got 3 or 4 people together, it may seem that one person's generating a lot of ideas and they can feel a little bit self-conscious about maybe they're monopolizing the discussion, and so they'll stop generating ideas to let everyone else have a turn generating ideas. And that's sort of an artificial constraint where people need to feel free to have as many ideas as actually come to them, and so everyone should keep in mind that there's an unlimited amount of ideas that can be generated, and so no one person has to feel embarrassed about having too many ideas. No restrictions means that any solution from any perspective may be proposed, and that's sort of a specific thing beyond the idea of no boundaries and no holding back. No restrictions means that sometimes we get put into little pigeonholes in an organization. Maybe if you're in the IT department, you're in the mindset of really only focusing on IT ideas. But sometimes someone in one department may have an idea on how the overall process can be improved that has to deal with something outside their department. And Toyota, the car manufacturer, is sort of famous for the idea that anyone in the company can propose improvements and suggestions for anything that they do. And so it may be that a janitor has an idea of how they can improve the assembly line on a production line. And so, you know, a janitor who you'd normally think is only going to be doing cleaning may have an idea, and so they're really open-minded about allowing ideas from any perspective and throughout the entire organization. So no restrictions. Even if in a class project you're supposed to be assigned to, you know, writing the report instead of building the prototype, during the brainstorming session, all those boundaries should be eliminated, and everyone should feel free to suggest ideas regardless of those boundaries. No shame, of course, is related to the idea of no criticizing. People shouldn't feel embarrassed for bringing up an idea and shouldn't be judged. All right. So, did everybody get those written down, those 7 ideas? If not, remember that the video recording of this class lecture will be posted on YouTube, so you can thumb through it later on. Now, I mentioned earlier that there's a difference between formal brainstorming and informal brainstorming. And informal brainstorming can be done anytime, and it may just be a group of people sitting down together to talk about the ideas, and so there isn't really a schedule for it. There won't be a leader during informal brainstorming, and you may not be using some specific system for taking notes. But all those things aren't true during a formal brainstorming session. A formal brainstorming session is used when you need to have a little bit more documentation for the ideas that are generated, or if you want to really be sure to squeeze every last drop of creativity out of people, then formal brainstorming can help you with that. So it requires a little bit of organization. And what I'm going to tell you today is what are the steps of formal brainstorming, and then we're going to try a formal brainstorming process. Regardless of whether you're doing informal brainstorming or formal, in both cases, all those rules from the previous page still apply. Whether it's an organized, really detailed thing in the case of the formal brainstorming or something more relaxed, you still shouldn't criticize people. There should be no limit on the ideas, and all those rules still apply either way. The purpose for a formal brainstorming process is to try and have that creative atmosphere that has people generating lots of ideas, but also to try and avoid some of the chaos or competition that can exist. Because sometimes in an informal brainstorming session, think about there are more people in a group that are more talkative than others. Some people are hesitant to speak their minds in a situation when one person is dominating. And so by putting just a few gentle constraints into place, as you do with a formal brainstorming session, then those people who ordinarily would be a little bit more quiet and reserved feel able to express their creativity. So during the formal brainstorming, there's 3 phases: idea generation, idea trigger, and compilation. And we'll talk about all 3 of those in more detail. All right. Formal brainstorming, when you first start phase 1, generating the ideas, you have a note page in front of you where you write down all the ideas that you can, and this is just sort of an individual thing. You're not discussing with other people. You're on your own generating ideas. And this helps to avoid something that's known as groupthink. Has anybody heard that word before, groupthink? Anybody know what that is, groupthink? Okay. Sometimes groupthink does happen during brainstorming, but groupthink is often used in a negative way. Like, groupthink is a bad thing. When people use this, it's sort of a pejorative term that you want to try and avoid. Maybe you've been in a meeting before where it seems most of the people there are sort of not interested in being the meeting. You're just there because you have to be there. And one person's yammering on, and everyone else sort of switches off their brain and just nods their head. Some people think that more heads are always better, but in some cases, if you're not personally invested in the discussion, you don't really care what's happening, people turn their brains off and groupthink sets in. And groupthink is when a group of people just go with whatever the easiest idea is and don't really put in a lot of individual effort. And so people start thinking the same way just because they don't bother to think independently. And so during the idea generation phase, the fact that during the very first time of the discussion you're writing your own ideas down without knowing what somebody else has thought of avoids groupthink, because the burden is on you to come up with something. And then later on you're going to compare ideas, but in the very first instance you're writing down your thoughts individually. Now, during the idea generation phase, you'll take a short break after maybe 2 minutes of trying to write down as many ideas as possible. You'll take a short break, and that's known as the relaxation stage. And so there's this idea that if you go through tension of trying to write down your ideas as much as possible, and then relaxing for a moment and not thinking about it, and then starting thinking about it and being more intent in generating ideas again, it's been shown to enhance creativity. And so usually, and what we'll do today is we'll have 2 minutes of tension, which is where you're trying to generate ideas, a 1 minute break, which is where you're maybe getting a drink of water, checking your phone, whatever. And then during the relaxation phase, you're sort of reviewing ideas, and anything that came to you during the tension phase you're writing down on the paper as well. Okay, after doing that, all of those activities are documented in one column of the sheet that I'm going to give you today. And so after that first phase, the second phase of idea trigger, the leader or the convener in a formal brainstorming group will call on each person in the group to write down, not to write down, but to read their ideas that were mentioned in column 1. And so whoever goes first will mention their ideas that they came up with. And so if the idea is how we can make a lot of money, like fundraiser ideas, maybe someone says, popcorn sale, rob 7-Eleven, sell pizza in the dorms. You come up with all these ideas, and then if the first person who's reading their list, if you had the same ideas as them, you cross off what they said and you already had written down, so that when it's your turn to read your ideas, you only mention things that are unique, that hadn't been mentioned before. And so the person who reads last may only have 1 or 2 unique ideas that hadn't already been mentioned, but that's okay. What it does is it allows who's ever convening or taking the notes for the meeting to make a list of all the ideas that are generated, sort of to compile everything together. And then, simultaneous to that, as someone else mentions an idea, maybe something that you didn't think of, that may lead you to think of a completely new idea. So if someone says, we should sell popcorn, you may hear that and think, well, what if we sold popcorn at a Marshall football game? And so that's a new idea, some new angle on what they said. And so you'd write it down in the second column of the page where you're taking notes. And so it's sort of a new round of ideas being generated based on what you heard. And so continuing with this during the idea trigger phase, after everyone has read everything that was in column 1, and you've written down some new ideas in column 2, then you can go through the process again of some silent time for you to try and think of new ideas, the relaxation, tension, and going back and forth between having like an individual period of time where you write down your ideas, and then people reading through the ideas and not yet really discussing their feasibility, because remember, that's something separate. Not trying to rank the ideas, because at this point you're only trying to generate ideas, not to see how feasible they are. And then finally, in the third phase, compilation, then someone in the group would make a master list of all the ideas. And once again, not ranking them according to how feasible they are or how much money they generate or which one is easiest. It's just about making the longest list possible of ideas and possibilities to solve the problem. And there's a quote here that's attributed to General Eisenhower, who eventually became one of the presidents of the United States, he said during World War II that plans are nothing, but planning is everything. So what do you think he meant by that? Plans are nothing, planning is everything. Any ideas what he might have meant?
You're not going to do it without a plan.
Yeah, and probably a World War II general saw that a lot, that you're not always, the plan falls apart, but what's the second part of that quote?
The fact that you made up a plan is going to help.
You're not going out there and just randomly doing.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you may not go according to the plan that you put together, but the process of planning forces you to consider what might go wrong. And if something goes wrong, what would be your reaction to that? And it forces you to think about what are you going to need for accomplishing the plan. And so just that process of planning is really the value. It's not necessarily the plan itself or the report you put together. It's just the process of thinking of all of the things that need to be done. All right. So what we're going to do during our brainstorming activity today is I'd like you to get back into the groups you were in on Monday. So these are the groups that you're doing the House of Cards activity with. And I'd like you to brainstorm the problem of parking at Marshall University. And I'm sure that if you own a car, you're already aware of there being a parking shortage on campus. And I come to work early mainly so that I know I get a parking spot. I'd rather sleep in late and not get here till 11:45 for my noon class, but I got to get here, before 9, or else I can't count on there being a parking space. And so, if you're not already sitting with your group, go ahead and move so you're sitting next to them. And I'm going to hand out this form where we go through that process of 2 minutes of idea generation, 1 minute of relaxation where you're not thinking of parking at all, and then 1 more minute of trying to generate additional ideas, and then you can discuss your ideas of how to solve the problem of parking at Marshall. So let me give you these. Remember, no idea is too crazy when you're generating as many alternatives as you possibly can. So, parking garages on the moon. Feel free. All right, so once you get the paper, I'll get out my timer here and we'll do the 2 minutes of individual idea generation, 1 minute where you're supposed to not think about parking at all, 1 additional minute of idea generation, and then you can have a small discussion with the people in your group. All right? All right, so did everybody get a copy of the paper? I think we might have some extras there. All right. 1 more? Okay, here you go. All right, so the 2 minutes begins now.
Is there ideas to make it better?
Yeah, how would you solve the parking problem at Marshall? What would improve the current situation? All right, so that 1 minute is finished. Now, what I'm going to have you do is get into your groups, and you'll have a couple of minutes to read over the ideas that were generated. One person says their ideas first. The other people, if someone says an idea that you already had, then cross your idea off or maybe put a check mark next to it. And if you think of some new idea that is based on what they said, maybe a different take on it, then put that in column 2. So if it's just an idea that arose from something you thought of while they were talking, put it in column 2. And once everybody has had a chance to read off their ideas, then go through another sequence. I'm not going to do the timing on this one because everybody may take a different amount of time to talk over the ideas. Remember, it's 2 minutes of individual idea generation, 1 minute rest, and then 1 more minute of idea generation. All right? And so we'll go through that cycle 1 more time, and then I'm going to ask each group what are some of the ideas that came up with for how to solve the parking problem at Marshall. And maybe we'll come up with something so revolutionary that you'll be able to come in here at noon and finally get a good parking spot. So we'll see. There might be something really good out there. So I'll leave it to you to have your discussions now. Just read through the ideas. And remember, don't criticize, don't judge, don't shame. There's no such thing as too many ideas. We're trying to have as much creativity as possible. So go ahead. All right, I'm interested to hear what ideas you've maybe come up with. So, what's that?
Can we see the picture again?
The picture, you want to see the picture? All right, let's start with Team 8. I'm curious to know what some of the ideas are that you came up with solving the parking problem. Team 8. So just to review, here's the teams, if you don't remember what team you were in. So Team 8 is Tudor, Van Adder, and Williams. So Team 8, what are some of your ideas on how to solve the parking problem? Bueller? Anyone?
Underground parking.
What's that?
Underground parking.
Okay. What else?
Extended Sparks garage.
What's that?
Extended parking garage.
All right. All right. What about Team 7? A couple of ideas that you came up with.
More public transportation.
How would that help?
So people want to drive here, they go on like buses or trains or whatever.
Very good. All right. What else?
So you can buy up all real estate around in the remodel areas, so
Uh-huh.
these old junky houses and empty lots and whatnot that aren't being used currently, wipe them down into parking lots and then get like a Disney type shuttle system to bring everything in.
Yeah.
You know, do that. Then you can also build a big parking garage right here in the engineering building and then make all the parking passes universal so that you can park in either a parking garage or stuff.
All right. All right. Let's see. Who is next? Group 6?
We have, like freshmen or underclassmen can't have cars on campus.
I like that. All right. What else?
So like shifting gears, because we get the closer lots, and then, like they said, there's vacant lots on the other side of the stadium that are farther away, you would have to walk to, but that could be people who live on campus.
All right.
That don't have to go to their cars every day, they have to use their cars.
Good idea. All right. What about Group 5?
Assigned parking spots.
All right.
Garage passes are the cheapest, so more people just park there.
That's an interesting thought because you got to drive all the way up. It's maybe a little bit less convenient. It's interesting because now they're more expensive.
Yeah.
All right. And I think that a lot of the garages are empty. They certainly
yeah.
fill up. Yeah.
Because no one wants to.
I went in one yesterday.
It's more expensive and it's kind of a hassle. Yeah.
I'd park in there if they were
Yeah.
less expensive.
All right. Group 4.
You could raise the price on a parking pack.
And how would that help?
Nobody would want to buy a pack.
Yeah. So people would be discouraged from driving. You know, if too many people driving cars is the problem, maybe they'd carpool. You know, make it more expensive, and then there'll be less of it. All right. What else?
Space management, put smaller cars in specific parking cars and
All right.
size parking lots, so you take out that average.
Ah, okay.
Space extra.
All right. Very good. Are we on Group 3 now? All right. Any new ideas that haven't been mentioned yet? All right.
Work with places in the community, like Steel West Virginia over here has a ton of parking spaces, like sure they don't use. But, you know, the lot of apartment there,
Yeah. All right. Yeah, there may be, you know, places where they're working the night shift and they don't need their parking during the day. Who knows? All right, group 2.
Find a way to reward students for carpooling.
All right.
Take out the meters surrounding campus and allow parking there.
And how would that help?
We get more parking for people around campus, and then people that pay for the meter can just park maybe 1 block away instead of.
Okay. All right. And group 1.
We could ban all non-Marshall associated cars from campus, like parking under the meters, because I mean, not everybody that's parked at a meter is associated with Marshall.
All right. Oh, another one?
You could have a visitor parking, which is only like 1 hour max. So if you just had business to take care of on campus, you would be there for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
and leave.
All right. Are there any other ideas that were maybe so good that you'd like to share them, or something you didn't get a chance to the first time around you'd like to mention or bring up?
Randomly tow cars to free up space.
Randomly tow? And that would further discourage, right? You weren't sure if your car would be there.
It's a lottery.
People would ride their bikes more if that happened. I like it.
They don't tell you where they take it.
Yeah.
Students can ride the city bus for free with the ID card.
That would be really nice if it was free. And there are a lot of college towns where it's set up that way. You know, when I went to graduate school, it was that way. You just showed your ID.
Most people do it already, but like they can strictly park by department, like certain
Teachers.
Yeah.
You could group it a little bit more.
Like the places over here could be just for engineering students.
Yeah, closer to the engineering building. Or at least engineering professors, right?
There are more in the better campus housing, maybe people that want to live on campus and not have a car.
That's true. If there would be fewer commuters if there were better housing options. That's an interesting point.
Bad Patty's will be right on campus, and maybe half the people that park near Bad Patty's will.
Right. And I've wondered, we've got basically it's a junk recycling mill just off campus, and I thought, it's too bad campus doesn't go to the river. I mean, it'd be beautiful real estate, but at the same time, we're also experiencing a parking shortage in the short term. Was there another idea over here? What was yours?
I know there's a parking garage underneath Smith Hall.
Yeah.
They could be doing that to all people.
Right. Yeah. Okay, well, those are some interesting ideas. We've got about 4 minutes remaining, so before I give you some time just to talk to your group members about the House of Cards, I thought I'd review the announcements one last time, remind you that, first of all, we don't have class on Monday. So if you can come here on Monday, but I won't be here and neither will your classmates. And so Monday's a holiday. Reading quiz number 2 is available until Wednesday the 4th, so read chapter 2 in your book, and that assignment where you need to come ask me a question in my office, you can do that today until 2:30 because I'm opening up some extra office hours because tomorrow during my office hours there's a block where I won't be in due to a meeting. And then Wednesday we're going to have the House of Cards activity, and so you need to practice, and hopefully do some more brainstorming, find a really good idea that is strong, fast, tall, generate as much maximum revenue as possible, and I'll be anxious to look at what you come up with and your design reports. So we've got a couple of minutes before you need to go. You can just talk to your groups if you'd like to go over where things are at with the House of Cards. Are there any questions before you do that? All right, well then with that I'll see you next Wednesday, and feel free to use the last couple of minutes of class just to meet amongst yourselves.